Hello, world, and welcome to the Innovation Coaching Podcast. My name is Klaus Hostel, and with me I have Philippe Hertzberg. Philippe, tell me how I can help.
Thank you, Klaus, and thanks for this opportunity with your podcast, which actually is very timely because I'm in the business of experiential travel,
Mm.
and I founded an agency in 2018 with the ambition to redefine what a travel experience should be or can be.
Ooh.
So what we do is we open doors that are usually closed. We bring access to spaces, to places that are usually difficult to access. But what we're about is not necessarily just the access, it's really about the entire experience. And through my journey with my agency, what I found out is that, having access to destinations, whether it's a museum, a monument, you name it, is wonderful. But equally important and as important is, the story and who actually tells that story.
Mhm.
So the storyteller. I work with tour guides. I call them storytellers. My prior career is in storytelling. So the idea for this agency in redefining travel and experiential travel was really to put storytelling and storytellers at the heart, right? The promise is we're going to bring you the best experience, whether again, iconic landmarks, you name it, an experience that you've never lived with amazing stories, captivating, inspiring storytellers, and also create emotions, right? And I know this is your area of expertise, but the more we're able to connect and create emotions when we curate and we put together our experiences, the more we are connecting even the neuroscience of it all, which I'm fascinated about. We're connecting emotions to memories. And our promise is that you will have unforgettable experiences, memorable moments that you will carry in your mind, in your heart, in your body forever, and that you will cherish forever. These are like little capsules in time, like a time capsule that I when I come and visit Paris or any destination, then I come back with that. And it's a long introduction, Klaus, to tell you about the project I would really, really like your insights about is that in my journey with storytellers, tour guides, I've actually organized moments where the team of tour guides where we've brought them together and we were exchanging, best practices. How can we as a group collectively elevate the experience, make it even more personal, bring more emotions, more more memory? What are the elements of wonder? That's a word I love to use, bringing in wonder with the five senses whenever we can. And so I've organized this year a couple of sessions, just more, these were not training sessions, they were sharing best practices among tour guides. And after these sessions, the tour guides were really excited, very enthusiastic. They were saying, Philippe, we don't often have the opportunity to meet among our peers. Once we have our training to get our certification, our tour guide certification, we're basically alone. I mean, we sometimes have support from travel agencies that we work for, but then we're really on our own. Yes, there are associations that help, and associations are there to protect our labor laws, to protect our status in our respective countries, also give us some training on destinations, the content. But then there are all these soft skills, right, that we're not necessarily honing or continuing to hone. And so there was this like aha moment when I organized these moments with the tour guides I work with. And the aha moment was, well, what if we were to provide a resource? And I'm actually bringing it out there and calling it the Storyteller Academy.
Mhm.
And the Storyteller Academy is your companion if you're a tour guide worldwide that will help you in your journey, in your professional journey, to work on and workshop many of the skills you don't necessarily, well, you have them, but you're not necessarily aware that you have those skills, or that maybe some of them need to be can be refined. So it's so this is really the beginning of this venture, of this idea, of this project. My wish is that it would be a non-for-profit, and we can get back to that of why I think it should be non-for-profit, tied to the learning elements and the content. There's a community, of course, bringing tour guides together so they can exchange, they can meet virtually, and then maybe in face-to-face afterwards. But the ambition is really to have sort of this, it's not a school, right? It's really this academy that you join. The idea would be to have it on a membership experience type program with a monthly fee. And the community is important because that also allows the academy to bring the ideas of what are the trainings or what are the skills that we need to perhaps develop, what formats. So really, it's a great source for the community, would be a great source for content ideas and also learning for the academy itself. There could be also, and I'll end my sort of long introduction with this point. There could be down the road some kind of certification that the academy gives you, a certification for the candidates that wish to have that certification, and that maybe that certification becomes a bit of a label that is recognized in the travel industry. You are a member of the Storyteller Academy, and you actually went through the certification. When I think about that, I think about, because I do work with, and you probably know the Golden Keys, which are the concierge. That is a certification that the concierge strive to achieve. And there's also there's a jury, there's a test. You need a godfather, godmother to be a candidate to the Golden Keys. So there's a whole process. So there could be an element of inspiration that I'd like to dig a bit deeper into. But overall, right now I'm trying to also frame, with the help of the tour guide storyteller I work with, and also other colleagues in my community, I'm trying to frame also the pillars. What are the important pillars that if you are a tour guide, you want to address? And a headline could be, if I'm a tour guide, the academy is going to help me monetize my passion for storytelling. And in there, I'll find, voice, theater, performance, building empathy, these skills. Obviously, I will find as well marketing, promotion, communication, if I want to promote myself and be less dependent on agencies and be contacted by clients directly. I will find storytelling as well, designing, how to design an experience. It's to be built, but there are some certain pillars under which you would find some courses with, once a week, you'd have at least a promise that once a week there's something inspiring, insightful that will be delivered to you by the academy. And then the format could be a podcast or the conversation like the one we're having today, but it could be best practices where you have members who are willing to showcase some of their work. And then there's maybe some experts or contributors who are giving their advice. Anyway, it's all to be created, but I hope I've painted for you and our listeners a clear picture of, at least the ambition behind the Storyteller Academy.
You have, and thank you for that intro, Philippe. And I think you've also, and I say this with love and a bit of sarcasm, I think you've also painted one of the Storyteller Academy's first challenges. Because a story is constructed. A story can be true or it can be false. But no matter if it is, it's constructed. It's not all reality, right? If I ask you to tell the story of your life, you could tell it with focus on your career. You could tell it with focus on your friends or your family or your travels. And these stories would all be true, presumably, but they would be very different because a story never tells the whole truth. What it does is it highlights part of a truth or part of a reality. And it does it in a way that makes it clearer and easier to understand, right? The story of the 1970s can be told as the story of flower power and of hippies. It could also be told as the story of the oil crisis of 1973. It could be told as the story of the beginning of the internet, which is rarely the story of the 1970s, even though it's there. So one of the first things about stories is that stories need omission. Stories need to be very, very clear for them to be understandable. And I think that the first challenge we have here is that from the story you told, I think we need to make that a bit sharper to begin with.
Mhm.
Because right now you're seeing all the possibility, right? And the first thing to do with something like this is to nail down what are we going to not be? What stories are we not going to tell? And let's just start with the name, right? Because you gave this beautiful intro. There's a lot to dive into, right? And we could start in many different places, but I'll start with the name because I love the fact that you're saying this is tour guides and storytelling for tour guides. This is the space we want to own. I love that. It's not storytelling for bankers or storytelling for children or just storytelling, which is even crazier. It's storytelling for tour guides. And the name is, of course, the Tour Guide Storytelling Academy. Or wait a minute, is it? Or maybe it should be. Because the way you're presenting it is clear. And it's for either it's for you, if you're a tour guide or you're in that space, or it's not for you, right? This is not for consultants. I've taught storytelling to consultants. This is not for them because it's a very different thing. It's storytelling for tour guides and for those tour guides who want to be the solo tour guide without being dependent on an agency, but who want to make it into either a freelancer or an entrepreneurial business, which is really brilliant because they have needs where the moment it becomes the storytelling academy, suddenly you fling the gates wide open. Suddenly it's for everyone on this earth, right? Storytelling academy.
Mm.
Who in the world from the age of 4 and above would not be interested in the storytelling academy? And that, of course, leads to the next problem. Who in the world from the age of 4 and above should be? Where if the first story we tell is the name, the Storytellers Academy, but in this case, maybe it's tour guides. Maybe it's the Tour Guide Academy, or maybe it's the Tour Guide Storytelling Academy, or maybe it's the Tour Guide Basic Storytelling Training Academy, right? And each of these names tells a different story.
Mhm.
So I think the first thing that I would, at least from hearing this, would advise on is to say, take a deep, hard look at who are you trying to reach, and then look at that name. And does the name do what you want it to? Because I think right now it probably doesn't. So that would be my first thing would be that. And the second I would say is that I think also there's a huge difference between, is this the general training school or community for tour guides, which sounds brilliant, bloody brilliant, or is it the Storytelling Academy for tour guides, which also sounds brilliant, but are not the same? Because as you said, there's also soft skills and there's how do you create empathy. And some of this is to do with storytelling and some of this is to do with being a tour guide. As a storyteller, usually you have a stage of some sort, right? You might be standing in front of a monument, or you might be on a stage in front of a group of people, but you usually have people's attention, sort of, and then you have some time and you need to tell the story within that time. That's how many storytellers, that situation is something most of them recognize. Where if you're a tour guide, there's also the simple practicality of how do you make sure the kids don't run off and you lose half your group. Where when I'm doing a keynote, I rarely have to worry about half the group disappearing because they need to catch their kids. But for many tour guides, this is reality, right? And that means that if there was a training module in this academy or a community session about how do we keep parents engaged without them worrying about their kids running off, I think a lot of people would say, I want that. I would love to hear how other people do that. Where if it's Storytelling Academy, then if as a keynote speaker, I think a Storytelling Academy sounds brilliant, but maybe that part is more for the tour guides and less about the storytelling. So I think, again, figure out who is it you want to serve here and what do you want to serve them with. Let's start with those two, then we can move off into different directions. But those are two things I think right off the bat. Who are you trying to serve? What sort of brilliance do you want, right? Go right, go left, go center. It's all going to be great. But which sort of it are you going for?
Mm. Yeah, thank you for that initial feedback, Klaus. To the question of who are we serving, it is clearly the tour guide community, and the focus is, to your point. I love your example of the kids running around, because that is a major challenge together with so many others, including how do you adapt to different cultures, different nationalities. Sometimes you have three generations in front of you. Sometimes you'll have a large group and they're only teenagers and they're on their smartphones. So there are just so many cases, so many parameters to take into account, so many skills that you need. I mean, I'm actually fascinated by the more I'm working with tour guides, I'm fascinated by their role and the complexity of what they need to deal with because yes, sometimes you're meeting with guests just for the first time. And in just those few minutes, you need to sort of build that trust, that confidence, that loyalty with every single member, every single age. And so back to your point, yes, it is really clearly for tour guides. It's not addressing although it can address the storyteller in them. It's also trying to say you are a storyteller. I've come across tour guides who maybe in France, but the word storyteller, they don't necessarily understand it, and they feel it does not represent their profession.
Hmm.
It has sometimes a connotation in different cultures, and I know it well for France, but which is not necessarily as positive as they would want it to be or as they think it is. I truly think a storyteller is, and all the tour guides I work with, they really enjoy being represented as storytellers. And what they do is quality, engaging, inspiring storytelling. That's the area they operate in. But some of them they already hone that skill of stories. And I love your earlier point about what story are you telling? You need to decide what you omit, what you keep. As I told you initially, I worked in, or maybe I didn't tell you this, but I worked in publishing and media. And I always compare the role of a tour guide and the role I have with tour guides as the editor and the journalist. What story are you going to tell? This is the story I want to tell. Well, let's think about, depending on the audience, that might not be the best story they would want to hear. So you think about that, and so understanding those nuances, even in the storytelling and the content, is also important and could be also a skill, part of the skill that you provide within this academy. But to your, going back to, yes, it is for tour guides. It is for really exploring any of their, I guess, their needs, their questions, their doubts. The ambition would be also to say, hey, we admire what you do. This is a great community to be part of, and we're going to give you the confidence that you need in some cases to maybe charge more, to back to the point of monetizing. This is also going to be about ultimately how can you monetize so that you are charging more, you have more time to be creative and work on maybe passion projects. Have more time to hone your skills and learn, more time with your family, because sometimes in high season you can just be one after the other. It's just you're in this tunnel working 7 days a week or 6 days a week. So it's actually giving back in a way, not necessarily saying we don't want you to work with agencies. Obviously, yes, agencies are really important, and some are they pay really well and they treat tour guides very well, and but it's also giving you maybe that ability, that window to say, well, there's a path where that you can build also to on your own, where you can reach some clients and actually maybe have your own brand, which some of the tour guides I work with have their own brands and they're already there with their own website and they understand SEO and sometimes also Google AdWords and so forth.
I love that. I love that you're thinking in those terms. And again, that the more you talk about it, the more it leads me to think the Storyteller Academy is not what this is.
Mm,
Beautiful as that sounds,
yeah.
but it's much more the Tour Guide Academy. And that leads us to the next point, which is there's a huge difference between, are you creating an academy? Are you creating a community? Are you creating a movement? Are you creating a club? And some of these, not so much what the words are, yes, that's important, but also what is it, right? Because if you say academy, then my initial thought, which may or may not be true, is that an academy is a place I can go And when I leave it, I will be better or smarter or more skilled in some way. And I will also have gotten to meet some people. If it's a community, then I join it. And as long as I'm part of it, I will have access to people who I can use for sparring or inspiration, or maybe gigs will land in my turban or whatever it is. But that's a community. And if it's a network, then it's like, okay, I'm part of it. And it's a little bit do what you want, maybe don't do anything. If it's a movement, then it's not something I joined formally, then it's something I declare myself to be part of, right? As a radical feminist, I don't have a membership card anywhere because I'm part of a movement. As I was the chairman of a role-playing club and a nonprofit organization, which I helped found. I was the chairman of that for 16 years. And that meant it was very clearly defined. Were you a member? Were you not a member? Did you do events? Did you help run the thing? Did you help develop it? That sort of thing. There were A members and B members, etc. And then on the other hand, there's of course an academy, my old company, still in existence, but now run by our old chief of sales, who today is the CEO. It's called the Role Playing Academy. And what people got out of that, we could do anything related to role playing, but it was usually like, oh, you guys know role playing. And if we want to know more about it, we can come to you, right? That sense of it. And I think that it's also pretty smart for you guys to figure out, what do you want to be? And you can, of course, include it, right? You can have a community, and part of that community is the Startup Academy for tour guides. You could have an academy, and part of that academy is the community for tour guides. You can have a movement, and within that movement, there is an academy, there is a community, there is a training school, whatever it is, but figure out like, what is the organizational structure, and not necessarily from a who does what work, but which organizational part does what thing.
Mm.
And there's a huge difference between saying, we're going to create a community where people pay to be part of that community, and it's a nonprofit, so it's not, nobody's getting really rich off it, but people pay to be part of it. And what it does is it connects like-minded souls and helps facilitate discussions and meetings and sharing, right? And if I was a tour guide, I'd be part of that if I wanted to meet other tour guides for socializing, for knowledge sharing, for maybe tips or ideas about who to work for, who to work with, and kind of best practice sharing. But I wouldn't go there necessarily to learn something specific, because I wouldn't be sure who knew what. Where an academy is something I'd sign up for to get better at something, right? I would see that as like, I joined the academy, I do this course, I do this course, I do this course, maybe I do the supporting course as well, and then I leave, then I'm done. Where the community is something you join and you're part of it, and what will make you leave it is because it no longer gives you what you want.
Mm.
And those are both elegant models. They can both work in a nonprofit or in a for-profit manner, but they're very, very different. And if you have one, then it's pretty smart to figure out, is the community serving the academy, or is the academy serving the community, or how does it look, right? What sort of mental structure do you want to do? And I could see a case for both, but what do you think?
Well, I think you've put your finger on the challenge, is like, how do you, if you have the academy, where the promise in a way with the name is, I'm going to learn, right? I'm going to learn skills, I'm going to be learning. And then you have this community, which I think is equally important, because as I said initially, the community is going to help and inspire the topics of conversation, of learning of for the academy. So the challenge is, how do you make the community engaged enough so that they understand, they clearly see the connection, and to your point, that they want to stay in the community, that they're committed. Not only they want to stay, but they also want to participate and contribute, right? And like, you would ideally want someone saying, a tour guide saying, this is wonderful. I've seen colleagues of mine on the academy side. I'm in the community, or you can actually throw out an invitation. Who wants to be part of this live session, where it's going to be a workshop on a Notre Dame Cathedral tour or experience, and then you have everyone is like fighting to try and be part of that, just to chime in and share experience, and that inspires others in other parts of the world just to listening into that workshop. I don't know if I'm clear, but I understand I like the way you've sort of framed academy, community, network, movement. I think the way I see it is the ultimate question is, what are the needs? What are tour guides willing to pay for? What are conversations I've had already to come up with so far, or as far as uh, let me reframe it, as far as I am today. But maybe it's more to try and go more granular in exactly what are the needs, what are you willing to commit and pay for? And it's really finding that connection because between the community and the academy, or whatever the name is, so that the challenge is we're in a world where you're working on your own. Sometimes you're actually happy to be, not. It's very competitive out there. Sometimes you don't want to share your best secrets as if you're a tour guide. So, how do you bring in that element of trust where this is a space, a safe space where you will learn, you'll share, you'll find colleagues and peers who are like-minded and who ultimately want to enhance as a whole worldwide this profession, make it shine and elevate it to new heights, maybe to somewhere where it hasn't been, or to personalize. We talk a lot about, and the work I do is in luxury. Luxury ultimately is everyone should have access to that word or that part of an experience, which is really about personalization. How do you make that moment as personal as possible in every way possible, from the content of the story, the way you've connected, those first 5 minutes, the farewell afterwards, the sonography of the experience. How can you personalize and have that ability, that talent to do that over and over and over again and keep that high energy, high engagement, excitement, curiosity. I don't know if all of that makes sense to you, but that's what our conversation inspires me.
So some of it does make sense. No, it all does make sense. I think one of the things we need to do here, Philippe, or at least I would advise on, we don't need to do anything, right? But I would advise on is to say, imagine you're 26 and you are living in Rome and you're a tour guide and you hear about this new tour guide academy or tour guide community, and there's a price tag on it. It's not a high price tag. It's not a wild one, but there is a price tag. So it's a decision you need to make. What would make you say, yes, I want to be part of this? And here I'm not talking about what you as Philippe think the world of tour guides should do, because you're very clear on that. But what does the 26-year-old tour guide in Rome, what will make her say, you know what? I want to know more. And I'll give you a few options just to make it easy. One, getting better at her job in a broader sense, maybe some specifics, maybe in a broader sense, that the promise of join us, whether it's a community or an academy, but join us and you will get better at your job. Two, you will get more opportunities for doing your job in different places. Maybe there's job opportunities, maybe there's freelance opportunities, maybe there's agencies you had never heard of, et cetera, like a sort of a job opportunity board built in. Three, you will get to meet other people who do the work you do and get to chit chat with them about both the professional and the personal in a space where everybody understands what's going on, like a meeting of peers. And four, you don't really know, but you know that it's targeted to you, but you don't know what it does. Which of those four, if you had to rank them, which of those four do you think our fictional 26-year-old tour guide in Rome would prioritize?
I mean, number one would probably be more opportunities.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two would be probably meeting other peers, maybe equally with getting better at my job. Although at 26, you probably think you are pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There are chances that you think so there'd be a bit of curiosity, piquing your curiosity. How can I be better at what I do? I think I'm pretty good at what I'm doing. And So the fourth was what? What was the fourth?
Was what I know it's for me, but I don't understand what it does.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that brings it to, being super, super extra clear
What do you get here, right?
from the get-go, even from, back to the initial point you made about the name. It has to be, or the subtitle, title, subtitle, a subheading of what is the promise, what is the ambition.
Yes, and there was a Dutch company I worked with a little while ago, ASML, like one of these huge companies. They were 33,000 people. When I met them a year later, they were 37,000, right? They were big and they were growing bigger. And I was working with their learning academy. And one of them said they'd had this guy who'd run a training called Learn How to Speak Like Barack Obama.
Mhm.
Not learn how to speak, but learn how to speak like Barack Obama. And that training, the guy had run that training and it had been popular and he'd been asked to run it again and run again. At the end, a lot of people had gone through that training because the premise was so clear. And apparently the guy was good, right? He delivered it well. Maybe he was funny, maybe he was knowledgeable, maybe he made them feel good, maybe he actually taught them something. Probably all of the above, right? But the promise was learn to speak like Barack Obama.
Mm.
And that meant people had an immediate, I want that, or I don't want that. And the thing is, the moment you have something that's a little bit more fluffy, then it becomes unclear what it is, what are people getting out of it?
Mm.
Where if this is said, the tour guide job opportunity community, okay, I feel where this is going, right? Or if it's called the tour guide community, a place to find your next tour guide job. Okay, I'm 26, I'm a little bit bored with my employer. Maybe it's time to go to Parma. Maybe it's time to go to Venice. Maybe it's time to go to the Seychelles, right? Because this is a place where I can go to find my next opportunity. Or it could be the tour guide community where tour guides meet and make each other better. Well, that sounds good, but what does it mean? And already I'm pretty good, so do I need that? Or is it the tour guide academy where the best tour guides in the world teach you to be like them?
Mm.
Okay, maybe I'm 26 and I'm good, but maybe I'm not the best. Oh, and they've got Rodrigo teaching, who I met in Barcelona, and Rodrigo is good. Oh, wow.
Hmm.
And of course, you get Rodrigo in because who doesn't want to stand in front of 126-year-olds and say, I, Rodrigo, will now share my tips.
Hmm.
Where Rodrigo's not going to be, he's not going to be interested in the academy to make him better because he's already damn good. The 26-year-old might. So part of it's also to figure out what is the promise and how clear can we make that promise? Maybe you can't make it as clear as learn to speak like Barack Obama, but giving it some clarity on what do I get out of paying my membership dues or my course fees or my whatever, right? You and I are in the nice situation, especially for me, that you have just bought my online course, 15 tips on how to improve your PowerPoint. $9.99, and the reason for that is it was developed for a big international company so I could sell it dirt cheap. But still, thank you for investing that $9.99. That's not zero. It's an investment. It's not a big amount, but it's a similar situation, right? You could easily have chosen to spend that on a sandwich instead, and especially your time. And I'm guessing the reason you chose that was like, okay, I want to see how this guy teaches, and maybe I'm interested in PowerPoint. Maybe.
It's actually both, and probably many other reasons connected to this journey and this project and idea I'm presenting to you today was understanding how you frame that course, how different formats. I think we're today in a world, especially with the digital learning, where we're all experimenting with we're all facing the challenge of time, right? The competition. There's nothing new, right? The competition is time. So how do we capture interest, engagement, dollars with something that is really, that will change, in a way, change your life? I mean, that actually is what anything we do is sort of at a minimal scale or at a larger scale. There's always, I always like to say there's a before and after, right? There will be a before I take that online course on PowerPoint and after.
Mhm.
And there will be a before an experience, a travel experience, and an after, or before meeting Rodrigo and after. So it's really how do you make those moments as meaningful and where you're truly adding value and making a difference? I think to your point, I like the way you frame, because that is a question, or not a question, but an area to dig a bit deeper in, is the profiles. So you have the 26-year-old guide, but then you have many, and including the tour guides I work with, are second careers. I've been a professional, working in as an executive in multinational companies and traveling the world, and now I'm settled and I want to be more into this transmitting, sharing my passion, sharing my curiosity, my knowledge, for a destination, for monuments, for museums, and that's a very different audience with different aspirations and different areas of interest than a 26-year-old. But so that actually is really interesting to think about as I move along.
And I think on there you hit on something really, really important, is not just what do they want to get out of it, but who are they even? Because I love that example, that somebody who maybe is 65 and had a successful career in banking and now lives in the wine country they've loved for years and has started doing wine tours and found they like it. That's a very different tour guide kind of motivation than the 26-year-old in Rome. They might have great conversations, but they're going to look for different things, right? The 26-year-old might be thinking, okay, I'm a tour guide. I could go to Parma, or I could go to Los Angeles even, and use my tour guide skills in a different arena, where the 64-year-old who's living in wine country in Napa Valley in California and loves the country and has no intention of moving, but the grandkids are there, right? It wants to get better at the tours, or maybe just to meet other people who do this. So it's a very, very different thing they're coming for. And if you create a community for just those two people, there's always the chance they're going to have a great time. There's always the chance they're going to hate each other. But in between, the chance of it organically going well are quite a bit lower than if you said, this is a community, or this is a group even, for young professional tour guides looking for new opportunities, or for, we could call it, here's a community called tour guiding as your second career. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. I want to meet other people who did that. Oh, are there other people? Oh, wow. Can I meet them? And is there a retreat? And I'll even invite them to my house because I've got this ranch in Napa Valley and I'll ply them with great wines. Oh, I love this community. Where maybe that's not going to attract the person who's barely even on their first career and is just thinking, how can I pay rent? And is definitely not going to say, oh, I'm going to host something that's going to cost me 3,000 euros just because it's fun. Mm. Right? They are not the same people. And though they might meet and intersect, if you give people a chance to meet on something specific, then there's a better chance you'll get people who at least agree on what they're meeting on. Mm. And if they're paying money, it's even more important, because then they might say, oh, this is actually worth it. Yeah. And some of that can be done like micro segmenting. You can have a big community that actually has a host of smaller communities or smaller academies, but figuring out that, who do we want to hit? What do we want to help them with? And how do we frame it in a way so it's easy to understand? Yeah. I usually say that people who go to my website, where the first words they read are you looking for an overpaid rock star consultant to speak at your next event? Those are literally the first words on the page. Now, some people read that and they think, I'll never work with this guy. He's an idiot. Whoever would call yourself an overpaid rock star consultant? What a fool. Well, that's fine, because they were going to find out at some point anyway. And rather they find out fast. And the ones who do want that, they go, oh, this might be for me. And the more you can get them to make that immediate, oh, wow, or oh, no, the easier it is going to be, whether it's an academy or it's a community or it's a network. If it's a movement, let's not even go there, because that tends to go in all sorts of directions all at once. But I think that's something that's worth considering.
And to that, what you just mentioned about the way you present yourself and introduce yourself, it just brings to my mind something that I think is, well, right now I think it's necessary, but I like the idea of bringing sort of disruptive contributors, disruptive profiles into a profession that maybe is not used to. For instance, having you being part of the academy, and for as a keynote speaker, having, someone from, very, very different areas, a coach of CEOs, and leaders. Well, they can be great coaches for and contributors for tour guides. So really breaking out of that space where, oh, you expect to have, or maybe today, more research to be done there, but it's mostly teachers who are tour guides or who are in the industry. So I like the idea of, at one point it's clear that this is also an opportunity for you to be confronted with points of views, experiences, analysis, opinions that are not necessarily from your, to start with the word storyteller. Well, yeah, you are a storyteller, and that actually will tell you maybe why it's actually a good thing. What I want also to add is our conversation brought to mind the importance of giving feedback and getting feedback, including from not only for peers, which happens when you're training in schools, guiding schools, but equally important, I think, is getting feedback from clients, from guests, because they're, and I'm not talking about the 5 stars that you have on social media platforms. Oh, great guide, great experience, but really having the opportunity to speak to guests right after they've done a few, and telling, live in front of your tour guides, this is what I loved about Rodrigo or Fabien or any other, and this is why this was great. So reinforcing and making that connection with the audience.
I like that. And I think that whatever business you're in, that is critical, but especially when you're in one that is so human focused and so, where it's so easy to get that feedback, right? If you produce shoes and you're the factory worker, you might not ever meet anybody who wears the shoes. But if you're the tour guide, you're probably going to meet the people you're guiding on the tour. So the feedback loops are usually quite fast and efficient. So I like that point. Philippe, though I could easily talk about tours for a lot of time more, and I think you're onto something fascinating here. We are nearing the end of our time for this episode, and that means there's 2 things to do. The first is I'm going to thank you, and I'm going to thank you not just for bringing this to me, which was both interesting and inspiring and also fun, but also for bringing it to the world, because there are people out there listening, and they may not be thinking of starting a tour guide academy, but they may be able to recognize some of these. Oh yeah, what are we actually doing? Who are we serving? Who are we not serving? What's the story? And I think that that is going to be inspiring to some people. Thank you for sharing that. That takes both courage and generosity and is very much appreciated, not just by me, but by those who are not in the room at the moment, but who will be listening to this. Thank you for that. The second thing is I want you to take a moment and think of 3 things you take from this conversation. 3 positive, 3 negative, some sort of mix, things you're going to either do differently or think deeply about, or at least remember in a couple of days. That's the minimum bar to clear.
Well, before I go on to the 3 things, thank you, Klaus, for giving me this platform to share this project, this idea, which it is today, and really an idea and a project. It's been really, really insightful on many counts. In a way, I would say what you have done with this podcast and with this moment we spent together is in a way that the mindset that I would love to take in this academy, whatever we call it, because that's actually what we want is the opportunity to have very quickly. And you and I don't know each other that well, and we really met face to face today for this podcast. But I felt there's this connection, there's this enthusiasm that I definitely can feel. So thank you for that. So that actually would be something that I am taking away from this time together. The 3 things are, clearly for me, the name, right? Really, the name has to really represent and already speak to the audience that we're reaching, and also the content, and get the audience excited. 2 is working a bit deeper on that connection between Content Academy and community, and thinking more about the engagement side of how to engage the community into the academy and vice versa, and make them live together if that's the way we want to go about. And then the third point would be more on the research, really finding that common, I would say the common denominator between the different audiences, the 26-year-old and the professional who's considering a new chapter in their career. What's common there? What are the common threads if we want to go that route of bringing them together under this one experience? But that said, I'll say in French, merci beaucoup, Klaus.
Merci.
Oh, nice accent. And see you soon. À très bientôt.
Oh, very nice. See, the last one I can't match. Merci is where I stop. I can sometimes do a merci beaucoup, but that's where it ends.
Okay. À très bientôt. See you very soon. À très bientôt.
Okay. That needs to be practiced on. Luckily, our Interrail this year is to Italy, not France, so I still have a little bit of time before I need to go. The last thing to say is to thank all our listeners out there for being our flies on the wall.
Mm.
And finally, you've heard Philippe Herzberg, and you've heard me, your host, Klaus Hostel. Thank you for listening.